All right, so it looks like everybody is admitted from the waiting room, so we can go ahead and get started. Thanks so much, everyone, for coming to this event, and I'm going to let Carmen Ayers take it from here.
Hi, everyone. I am Carmen Ayers. I am the Legal Actions Housing Priority Coordinator, and I'm glad that you're here with us. Today, you're going to get a brief introduction to the rule petition that we filed in March, as well as why we want you here to help us with comments. And you will hear from a number of our staff. You'll hear from Rafael Ramos, you'll hear from Heidi Weiglinger, and you'll hear from Corey Lundeen. So, to get things started, and then we'll hear from you. So to get things started, I guess I will advance our slides. So to tell you a little bit about legal action, we are attempting to help low-income individuals protect safe and affordable housing for them. We look to remove barriers to employment. We help resolve consumer finance issues, and we assess and maintain public benefits, as well as assisting individuals with children and family law issues and victim support and protection. We have a number of special projects that span across a number of select areas, such as veterans, seniors, farm workers, and those near release or recently released from the prison system, to tell you a little bit about legal action and the work that we do. The major 5 areas are our priorities, and we extend out beyond. And as I stated before, here are our titles for who's on today's call. And what we will be discussing today, we're going to give you a brief overview of the petition. We're going to talk to you about how to submit comments. We're going to go over the template letter we've created to help assist with getting your voices heard, as well as any tenants and any individuals you work with through your advocacy. We're also going to include the information we'd like to see come out of these comments, and how to gather and include community voices, and any next steps beyond today. And then we will have our Q&A with our full panel.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about what a rule petition with the Wisconsin Supreme Court is. My name's Corey Lundeen. As Carmen said, I'm a staff attorney here in Legal Action's Madison office, where I do work on representing renters in eviction cases and also survivors of domestic violence and family law cases. So you all are probably familiar with the way that most laws are enacted. Our state legislature passes a law, our governor signs the law, and then it becomes a law. But there's another way that laws can happen and rules can happen, and that's through a Supreme Court order. Our Supreme Court has the power to make rules and laws that govern the court process and the process for managing attorneys and covering the ethical rules for attorneys. That's just one example of what a Supreme Court rule is. There are Supreme Court rules governing ethics, governing continuing legal education credits, governing the State Bar of Wisconsin. Those rules all came about as the result of a Supreme Court order. There's also lots of laws on the books that came as the result of a Supreme Court order rather than the legislative process. An example of that is there's a law on electronic filing in court cases. That law on the books came as the result of a Supreme Court order. Next slide. So our rule petition is a petition asking the Wisconsin Supreme Court to reduce the amount of time that most eviction cases are retained from 20 years to just 1 year. One of the Supreme Court rules talks about how long the clerks of courts, the people at the courthouse, have to hang on to court files. There's a lot of types of court files that need to be kept for a very long period of time. A lot of civil court cases are kept for several decades. Most criminal cases are kept for a very long time. Probate cases involving wills, are kept for 100 years. And for a lot of court cases, it makes sense to have those records retained for a long period of time. But for eviction cases in particular, That record of the eviction case has a huge detrimental impact on renters throughout Wisconsin. Our petition asked the Wisconsin Supreme Court to change the Supreme Court rule on eviction records so that in most cases, the clerk of courts will dispose of the court case after 1 year. Many of you on the call are probably familiar with the Wisconsin Circuit Court Access website. That's a website you can go to on the court's website to do a search to see if you've been involved in just about any court case in the entire state for the last 2 to 3 decades. There is a record of it. You can do a search for somebody's name. It will show up. The result of our rule petition, if the Supreme Court adopts it, will be that unless there is a money judgment entered against anybody in the case, in other words, somebody owes somebody money in the court case, the eviction case will not be maintained for more than a year. That covers cases where there was a judgment of eviction entered and there's no money judgment, but that also covers a lot of eviction cases where there is a stipulation to dismiss the case, the landlord and their tenant come to an agreement on the case, or the landlord has just dismissed the case, or the tenant has gone to court and won the case. So the only cases that'll be retained for 20 years will be cases where there is a money judgment. Part of the reason those cases need to be kept for a long period of time is that the amount of time somebody has to collect on a money judgment, the statute of limitations, is 20 years. So without a change in that law, there's no way around having those cases be retained for 20 years. Next slide. So when a rule petition is filed, in most cases, the Wisconsin Supreme Court opens things up for public comment and will allow for the public to make written comments on what the proposed petition does. We do expect that there will be comments from landlords and landlords group opposing our petition. But the point of this call, the point of our Facebook Live event last week, is to get support from the public for our petition. The Supreme Court has, as probably isn't a surprise, some very detailed and particular rules for how they want people to submit comments. It's not as simple as just sending an email to the court. You have to send the original and 9 copies to the clerk of the Supreme Court here in Madison. Those are hard printed out copies. If you are in the Madison area and are close to the downtown, you can go to the clerk's office and file the paperwork in person if you choose to do that. Otherwise, the easiest way to send the comments is to simply send them into the mail to the clerk's office. They also require you to email the written comment in Word format to the email address we have on the screen, clerk@wicourts.gov. It's enough for you to simply attach your written comment in Word format, and in the subject line, cite to the rule petition that we filed. That's Rule Petition 22-3. Next slide. We do have some sample templates you can use if you're looking to see what a written comment looks like. We'll be sharing those in the chat and can talk more about those in the Q&A. Any written comments that the court gets, unless you are filing something that is, who knows, something has explicit language or something that the court deems is not suitable for the public, the written comment will be posted on the court's website so that everybody can view all of the public comments that it gets on Rule Petition 2202. Next slide.
Okay, I think this is my slide, right? I'm Heidi Wegleitner, and I am a housing attorney in the Madison office and have worked in the area of eviction defense and housing barriers some time. And I recognize some of the folks on the call, but I thought I would just highlight some of the things that I think would be helpful and informative to the court when drafting comments. And I know many of you work in kind of the housing space or engage in anti-poverty work and are familiar with the harm caused by eviction records and how that's interfering with folks' ability to get into or maintain stable housing. But that doesn't necessarily mean the Supreme Court knows about these things or knows people who have faced eviction and faced these hardships. So it's really important for the court to have information to understand what seems like sort of a bureaucratic thing, how long records are stored, right? How that has real life impacts on folks, on people that we're working with every day, or on people, that we know. So we're looking for, individuals to share their experiences, as well as organizations to share what they've learned about eviction records and the impact on the folks they work with based on the work that you do. So we know there's lots of different sort of angles about this. One sort of and you'll kind of see some examples fleshed out in the samples that were shared in the chat. But we know one thing to speak to is the different reasons that folks face eviction. People face eviction because the rents are too damn high, right? Because the rents continue to escalate and people are priced out of housing, right? We know there's a shortage of affordable housing and folks are facing eviction because they can't keep up. We also know that obviously the pandemic has had a huge impact on people's incomes, right? And folks, some folks have been able to access emergency rent assistance during the pandemic, but they still faced eviction, either because that rent assistance, took some time to process, or they didn't learn about it until they were in eviction court, or maybe they never knew that it existed and they faced an eviction without getting rent assistance help. So we know that there are financial reasons often out of the tenant's control that can result in someone facing eviction court. We also know that as evictions, that income and financial loss is a driver of eviction, but eviction is also a driver of poverty, right? So we know that eviction can result in people having to pay more to get in. Maybe because you have an eviction on your record, you've been asked to give 3 times the security deposit, a triple security deposit when you're trying to get into housing. So both the financial reasons for eviction as well as the financial impacts of eviction, losing property in that process, are things that could be highlighted in a comment. Additional aspects of the harm caused by eviction, what is it, changing schools, educational instability, how that impacts that family mobility caused by eviction is something that folks experience and you may have experienced, or your clients may have experienced, and that's something to be highlighted. Of course, there are health impacts and there's stress, anxiety, and the ability to recover from an injury or a health issue, or continue recovery. Though all of these are impacted by housing instability and eviction. Some other thoughts about, I think non-renewals. We see a lot of folks in eviction court because they've just been non-renewed, and because in private housing, landlords aren't required to renew a lease. People often aren't given explanations of why they're non-renewed, and a change in ownership or A development pressure on a neighborhood could result in people's lease being non-renewed without them having anywhere to go. And that results in an eviction. And I think, again, that is not any fault of the tenant, but non-renewals lead to evictions and housing instability. Folks, I talked about health issues stemming from evictions, but health issues that also can cause evictions. If you're sick and you don't have paid sick leave and you lose your job, or, you need to take time off, those economic impacts and health impacts also are a lot of reasons why folks find themselves behind on rent, unable to keep up with their lease obligations and in eviction court. So we're really looking for the comments that can highlight these individual harms being experienced, the stories of people in this situation, and also what happens once they have had this eviction record, right? We know that this record follows people. And as Corey said, these evictions records right now are required to be retained for 20 years. And so how does that play out? How many applications did somebody file and receive a denial on? How many phone calls were placed and somebody told, well, you don't even bother applying because I see there's a recent eviction on your record, and that's true even when the eviction sometimes is dismissed and got resolved or debt got paid off. So I think it's also important to highlight, how eviction records have affected individuals in that way. How long have they experienced homelessness because they couldn't get into housing because of eviction records? What has that experience of homelessness felt like for them? How did it affect their mental and emotional well-being, their ability to keep their job? So these record impacts also are, I think, really critical as well. We want to tell the stories of the folks that we've been working with, and we have some guidance on, how to do that. From an organizational standpoint, if you're working in the area of emergency rent assistance or housing navigation, being able to, share your organizational information, whether you have some data on the folks you work with, or based on your experience what it means to be working with a person who has an eviction on their record, and the different types of obstacles that creates, whether that means they're paying more money to try to get in, whether or not they've experienced multiple denials, whether the property management companies that you're familiar with have policies that require denial or result in routine denials for people who have evictions on their record. All of that is helpful information for us. We also know, and as was highlighted in legal actions comments, this has this hurts communities of color more. This hurts Black and Latinx families more than other families. And if that's information or data that you have that you can share, I think that's also really important for the court to know. So we know there's a lot of different angles from which to approach these comments. And I think it's important for the court to hear from all those different angles, right? About how evictions play out, the different reasons for evictions, but also the harm created by these records, what that means for organizations working with folks trying to secure stable housing, as well as there might be a housing provider or two on this call. And if you can speak to, as a housing provider, if you've taken a different approach with eviction records, and you can speak to how an eviction record isn't necessarily a reliable measure of a tenant's ability to be a good tenant, that also could be really helpful. And we're here to help answer questions again about comments, and certainly you can follow up with me directly with additional questions. And I will turn it back over, I think, to Carmen. Is that right? Oh, you're on mute. I'm sorry. Did I? Is this still my slide?
Yeah, I think I got muted with everybody else. Sorry.
Oh no, that's okay.
I couldn't unmute until I got the message to mute. Okay, so the role of systemic racism in eviction. So this is one of the major areas that we wanted to highlight as well. Not only is there an impact on evictions as a whole, but there is a lot of disparity with these outcomes, and there is a racial equity lens that can be applied to this. So if you have noted these differences, which we've highlighted in this slide about Black women being evicted at a higher rate than most white women renters. It even extends to termination of vouchers. If you're looking at the nationwide percentages, because we have this data and we pulled it for you, you can include that in your letters as well, especially if you work with a population that looks like those that we are highlighting in the disparities that we're showing. So feel free to include that information because I think it is really relevant and really important to highlight that this is disproportionately impacting people of color, and we already have a small population of people of color within the state itself. So the more attention we can give to it as to why it's important, I think that goes a long way.
Thanks, Carmen. My name is Raphael. I'm with our Milwaukee office, where I'm the director of our eviction defense project and supervisor of our housing unit. At the EDP, we work with a lot of volunteers who do eviction defense, and they do it because they've been moved to do so because of the stories that they've heard about how impactful eviction is. And part of that story is what these eviction records do. And when people think about eviction records now, and how to address them, I think the common thing that people think of is sealing and redacting that record. And sealing and redacting is different from the record retention rule change we're talking about today. But what's relevant there is that we've seen courts respond positively to information that demonstrates how those records affect people in a direct sort of way. There was an unpublished Court of Appeals decision from a few years ago, Morgan versus Circuit Court of Dane County, that Korean legal action actually argued, and they persuaded the court that the administration of justice requires addressing the court record when a tenant can show with particularity that that record needs to be addressed. And in many ways, the concept is similar here. What we are asking is if people, organizations can work with and collect and include their individual client stories, it can be particularly helpful because they can really show how eviction records impact people or families' abilities to find safe and secure housing. And it helps demonstrate to the court that while the impact of records has this broad applicability that affects everyone in the system, at the same time, it's a really very particularized harm that affects each person or family in a very individualized and profound sort of way. It's stopped them from finding housing. They've been homeless for how long they've been couch surfing from one friend or family's apartment to another. How expensive has renting become because they have to pay double their security deposits because of their records. And these are stories that we could tell for our clients, but it becomes much more impactful when the clients can tell them themselves, when we can quote them saying how they've been affected by these records, how their life is more difficult, and how these records have created a burden on them that really is contrary to the administration of justice. So we're asking people and organizations to work with and collect individual stories to get the information they need to present that appropriately. So asking for initials, age, and zip code, and of course, making permission to quote them and using their initials in their comment. And really the goal here is to ground the stories that we're telling in real lives and real people. So we're not just throwing numbers at them, we're telling them why this matters, why it's so critical to the administration of justice, why it's so important. And it also has the added benefit of giving our clients who may not have the ability or time or wherewithal to actually submit and go through the comment process to actually have their voice heard as well. So it's empowering for them from that perspective. And it's something we're asking all our partners to do if they can.
All right, so here are some of the deadlines for commenting on the rule petition and the status of the rule petition. This is a slow process with the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Our petition was filed in March. There's the open comment period time right now until August 25th for the public to provide written comments on the petition, either in support or, as I said, we may get comments in opposition to the petition. After that happens, legal action then has an opportunity for us to submit written comments on the written comments that the court received. I anticipate most of our comments will be on any comments the court receives in opposition to the petition. We don't expect to be commenting much on people who are in support of the petition, other than to perhaps highlight some of the stories that you're telling about your stories and the stories of the people that you work with. Next slide. So the next steps will be for folks to send a comment to the court. We'll be commenting. The court will then decide whether to hold a public hearing at which it will hear from, give the public an opportunity to come to the Wisconsin Supreme Court down at the Capitol to talk in either support or opposition to the rule petition. We're not sure whether the court will hold that public hearing, and if it does, when it will be. But from our experience in the past with rule petitions, these are usually scheduled several months out. So if the court does decide to hold a public hearing, it will probably happen later this year or perhaps early in 2023. After the court hears from the public, they'll then meet behind closed doors. The Supreme Court used to do these meetings in public. They stopped doing that many years ago. So now their discussions about these rule petitions happen behind closed doors. So it's a process that is very opaque from the outside. We're not told when they'll be holding their conferences or when we will get a decision. The court generally takes its time to decide these rule petitions. So it is likely that any decision on the rule petition will be coming out sometime at the end of 2022 or early 2023. That's when we'll learn whether the court will accept what we're proposing, deny what we're proposing, which is a possibility, or do something different than what we're proposing. It's not a given that our court will accept what we're proposing and do exactly what we're asking the court to do. That's why we're asking for support from all of the folks on this call. Next slide.
So we have now ended the portion of our presentation, and if you need to write down our contact information, if you have further questions that don't get answered today, or you need access to any information that you can't find, you can easily email us at legalaction.org, or you can call us at 855-947-2529. And just another reminder that we do need these comments to be done electronically and hard copies mailed out by August 25th.
And there is one question in the chat. Is there optimism that this corporate court will rule for tenants as opposed to the propertied class? As probably, for those of you who don't know, our court is very conservative. It is a 4-3 or 5-2 conservative majority, depending on what the issues are. We are actually hopeful that our court will listen to us on this issue. Part of the reason we have that optimism is that the Supreme Court did recently revise the records retention rule, Supreme Court Rule 72, as part of that revision, most of which was just cleaning up old language. We did submit a comment to the court suggesting something along the lines of what we're suggesting in our rule petition, that they take a look at eviction records. I talked to the Wisconsin Supreme Court and testified at that public hearing on that rule petition. We got some comments on that comment of having a shorter retention period for eviction cases, and we're pleasantly surprised that the court did not shoot down this idea. There wasn't much opposition to the idea on the court. So it is a big lift to ask the court to do this, particularly this court. But like I said, we do have some hope and optimism that our court will not be completely dismissive of this idea. If we didn't think there was a chance for doing it or making this change, we wouldn't be making this proposal to the court at all. So we do have some optimism on that front.
Okay, now that we're kind of in the open session, this is the part I know everyone hates, but I'm going to ask you all to unmute yourselves, and we can go around the room to introduce ourselves and say why we're interested in this rule petition and a little bit about yourself or the organization that you represent. And we can just go with whoever wants to go first. Andy, I think you were the first to unmic, so I'm going to call on you.
Oh boy. Hi, I'm Andy Height. I'm the Housing Policy and Program Person for Wisconsin Community Action Program Association, which is the umbrella over the different community action programs across the state. And we're very involved in the distribution of rent assistance in 68 counties across the state, the smaller ones, and then a statewide homeowner assistance program. And a bunch of our agencies have ongoing affordable housing projects. So as an agency, permanent affordable housing for the lowest income people are critical. And then personally, I deeply despise the financialization of housing that's occurring as we sit here and watching how it perpetuates so much trauma and hemorrhages racial disparities across our community. So I'm supporting any and all efforts that can both preserve and expand what we have while creating a new way to do it, because the old ways are broken.
Thank you, Andy. We look forward to your organization adding a comment. We appreciate you. Corey, you're unmuted. If you want to go next.
Sure, I'm Corey Parragini from the Metropolitan Milwaukee Fair Housing Council. I guess our reasons are twofold, or at least the two primary reasons. First, all the disparate impacts of eviction policies, eviction screening on particularly women of color, but multiple other protected classes. But secondly, we have a program in which we help families that have rent assistance vouchers find housing in low poverty communities. And every single day, very qualified people who have lots of, extenuating circumstances have an eviction on the record, and there's just this whole class of people that are unhousable or at least unable to find stable housing. And so this just seems like a really great opportunity. So thanks for taking the lead on this and letting us comment.
Thank you, Corey. We look forward to working with you as well. And Sandy, you're on mic.
Hey, I'm Sandy Bernardi, and I oversee Nehemiah here in Dane County, Nehemiah's Court Observer Program. And we have a group that observes eviction court in Dane County and has been just watching hearings and learning and taking stuff in for about a year and a half now. And they've identified this as well as other redaction related things that they've been really interested in taking some action on. So I'm here representing that group.
Thank you. All right, who wants to unmute and go next? Oh, don't make me call on people. Oh, thank you, Lynette.
Yeah, I'm Lynette Rhodes. I am one of the managers in the city's community development division. And we're the division that oversees a lot of affordable housing policies for the city, and administers locally the Dane Core and the Eviction Defense Program. So I'm just going to say ditto to everything everyone already said, so I'm not just repeating. But yep, it's definitely something that I got a lot of information today that I want to escalate above me to the city's other people that write commitment letters and public comment letters.
Thank you. We appreciate anybody who can push it forward. So your voice is very welcome. Thank you. All right. How about Andrea?
Hi, everybody. I'm Andrea. I am the coordinator and case manager for the Family Housing Stability Program, or FHS, at the YWCA. And I would say that I'm here because a lot of my job is finding housing for individuals. So a lot of those barriers are evictions. So I'm just here to learn more. And ditto to what everybody else said, because yeah.
We appreciate you. Thank you for joining us. Jael?
Hi, everyone. I turned my camera off so I could finish my lunch. My name is Jael Curry. I'm also here as a part of YWCA's housing departments. I know we have one more colleague here. I'm also kind of representing a dual role as I serve on the city council, my gosh. And so just combining my experience with homeless services, with trying to navigate the political sphere, and as much as we can as local municipalities, showing attention, putting names and stories behind what we hear every day in order to hopefully make some way in some of the state's preemptive laws that don't allow us to do much to advocate for our folks. So thank you all for leading.
Thank you for your leadership and joining us today and expanding this work. Since you said you have another colleague, I'm guessing it's Samantha. Do you want to unmute and give us your intro?
She may be busy.
Okay.
It's like lunch hour around here, but Sammy is our sole staff at the Y that spends a portion of her time focused on advocacy. And so is kind of representing us from that standpoint. Oh, go ahead, Sammy, you take it away.
Oh, so I was just asking for intros and what brings you to this space and why you're here today.
Wow, thank you. Apologies. I swear I saw JL's face. I tuned in to listen more. Someone came to me. Anyway, I'm Sammy Clausen-Rupert. I'm the Advocacy and Grants Coordinator at YWCA Madison. JL sent us all this information yesterday, so I've reviewed everything you've said. I put out the Facebook Live. We'll be drafting something to share the work that we do and why we are in support of this. I'm also connected to our other YWCAs across Wisconsin and have already reached out to them to see, one, if they want to do something on their own organization, or just depending on our timeline of approving it all, if we could put a statewide comment of support forward. I think I know the answer to this, but just in case anybody else knows as well, I've reached out to the Ethics Commission because I'm a licensed lobbyist for the YWCA, and I'm wondering if anyone knows if this is considered lobbying. I believe it is, but if anyone with more expertise wants to help me answer that question, that would be helpful.
I don't know what the right answer is, but we have lots of restrictions on what we can do because of our federal funding. It is not considered lobbying for us to work on this, but that's because we have an exception in the federal regulations that allow us to work on court rules, which this is. This isn't a request to ask that the court change state law. It's a request that the court change a Supreme Court rule. Like I said, there's a whole bunch of Supreme Court rules that govern ethics for attorneys, the state bar, how we manage client trust accounts, all sorts of stuff, judicial ethics rules. It's not considered lobbying from our perspective, but I would encourage you to speak with folks at your organization that know more about your particular work to see whether it meets your definition of lobbying, because what I'm talking about is specific to Legal Services Corporation rules on this, but it is not a request to ask that any change to be made to state law. It's a change to Supreme Court rules.
Thank you. We appreciate you coordinating the state if you're able to do that. So thank you very much. Let's hear from Mary Beth. Okay, potentially Mary Beth is having lunch right now too. So we'll give her a minute and we'll circle back to her or they. Let's hear from Steve.
Hello, I'm Steve Howland. I'm a resident of Beloit, Wisconsin. I'm on a group called BATFO, Beloit Area Task Force on Homelessness. Mary Beth is also part of that, and she is one of the leadership committees. She can say more. I'm also on the local board of League of Women Voters, and this is an issue that we're trying to work on, the local league becoming somewhat involved in terms of lobbying as well. Formerly, I was on the Equal Opportunities Commission in Beloit, and I'm still on the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council of Rock County. So just kind of a local activist who, this is an issue that to me is pretty much a no-brainer. Why are you making it so difficult for people? And anything to make it easier. I'm trying to get the word out to others and help get support for statements supporting the petition.
Thank you.
Hi, this is, if I can jump in real quick, I'm sorry. This is Beth Glebe. Hello, everyone. I was on another call. I apologize. I am the board chair of Family Promise of Greater Beloit, which is a shelter, and we provide emergency services for families facing homelessness. And I'm also on the leadership team and one of the co-founders of the Beloit Area Task Force on Homelessness that Steve mentioned before, BATFO. And obviously this is an issue that speaks right to our population. And I know that Tammy is our executive director, and she was on the call at the beginning. So we were tag teaming, but obviously we'll support this initiative, and I think it's very needed in the community. Thank you.
We thank you for your support. And there are a few other staff members from Legal Action. If you could just go ahead and introduce yourselves. Alexis, I see you are the first one with your camera on, so I'll let you go first.
Hi. Oh, sorry, Rachel.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say, I didn't know if this was, if people had a hard stop at 1, so I did just want to, like, as we continue through introductions, since this was kind of a space for Q&A, if you did have questions, please feel free to raise your hand or put them in the chat so that we can make sure to address them before the hour is up. And while we continue chatting too, if you and your organization already has an idea of what area you might focus on in your letter, if you could put that in the chat, that would really help us, because we're going to be doing some outreach to groups and make sure we have like a variety of comments and support that are focusing on different areas. So it'd be great to get a sense of at least who's on this call and what they're focusing on, so that if we have some areas that maybe look like they're not going to get a lot of focus in the comments, when we reach out to other groups, we can ask them to do that. So sorry to cut you off there with your introduction. I don't want to do that, but I do want to make sure that we can get to everyone's needs.
No, I appreciate you, Rachel, because I surely was not looking at time. It doesn't even feel like an hour is almost gone. Goodness. So yes, that is way more important. So if you do have questions, you want to interject them now. If you know what areas you want to focus your letter on, if you can add it to the chat, that would be very helpful. Thank you so much.
And I see Andy's hand is raised. Do you have a question?
It's more of a comment, so I'll apologize in advance. But across the state, around over $370 million in rent assistance has been distributed to about 100,000 households now. But that's less than 30% of the households below 50% of area median income or low income households across the state. And so we have 1 million miles to go to meet a need of rising rents, stagnant incomes, and a really difficult dynamic to try to move the needle with the forces that are capitalizing on the current housing situation. So this, combined with multiple strategies, is a small part of what we need. And, you know, it's sort of sad that Wisconsin hasn't had an active network promoting permanent affordable housing for low-income people across the state. There's strong groups in Dane County and Milwaukee and in other places, but how do we tie it together, not just to visualize how we improve this system, but how do we build a better system, the next system? And we're hoping to try to launch some of those conversations through some sort of Wisconsin Affordable Housing Advocacy Network that we're hoping to launch at our Poverty Matters conference in late October. But, you know, it takes a nation of corporate control to hold us back, and it takes millions of us to make change. So we've got to figure out how to do it together across all our sectors. You guys do amazing work, and I know it's spiritually exhausting at times, but hopefully we'll find ways to galvanize our energies to continue to roll this boulder up Mount Everest and try to make change for the folks we work with and really fuel our mission statements of our organizations. So no question, but.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better. So hopefully this connection of like-minded individuals will stay on the same team, moving these things forward on other areas, not just this rural petition. Thank you. Okay. All right, Alexis.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Alexis Camacho Stedman, and I'm an outreach paralegal with the Madison office, but I work only with Rock County residents. So here assisting people with housing issues. We also have walk-in hours at Echo as well. And I actually just put up some hours at Headford that will be starting shortly as well. So getting out there and being accessible for people.
Okay, Jocelyn.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jocelyn Gallegos. I am the paralegal of the Eviction Defense Project out of the Milwaukee office for legal action.
Thank you. And then Allison, you want to round it out for us?
Sure. Hello, everybody. I am Allison Creekwer. I'm a staff attorney in the Madison office. I work on our community law project.
Thank you. Okay. So we have 5 minutes to go. If anyone else has any questions or any other thoughts they want to add on where their focus might be, or if you need assistance identifying a focus, now's the time.
And if anyone plans to do specific outreach to your clients to include their voices on their behalf, if anyone is planning on doing that, that would be great to know too. We do have, I put in the chat both the template and samples for if someone wants to do it as an individual. So if you want to share that with clients or people who want to share their story individually, but because of like the copies required and all that work, we thought it might kind of eliminate some of those barriers if you collected people's voices and inserted them into your comment, how we outlined on that slide. So if people are thinking of doing that, that would be great to know too. So just so we can get a sense of the stories that are going to be coming in.
And I have put in the chat for folks both my contact information, but also the links on the court's website for the process for rule petitions that we talked about, as well as the link to our specific rule petition. So if folks are interested in seeing what other people's comments are, nobody submitted comments yet, but after a few weeks, all of the written comments should be available at that link on Rule Petition 2203.
Okay. I am not a proponent of awkward silences, so I'll just take this time to thank you all for being on this call. Thank you for supporting the work that we're doing and being willing to lift up these voices, not only for your organizations, but for the clients that you serve. We really do appreciate you carving out a lunch hour time frame. We know that's difficult, but we figured with everyone's busy schedules, this would be the best time to meet up. So do look at our Facebook Live event, help us share that information out, get those views out, get the excitement pumping, and obviously, you know, write your comments, and we look forward to seeing them by August 25th. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Everyone.
Bye.